Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in from LinkedIn, Twitter, and my brand new YouTube channel. Today, we are going to be talking about CES as another CES put in the bag after a couple of years of a pause thanks to COVID. And as you can hear, if you're familiar with my voice, CS gave a lot of technology and the flu. So here I am. I apologize in advance for coughing and sneezing and all the rest of it. I'll try and do it as little as possible. But, as always, when you're coming home from Vegas, you're trying to make a point about what you saw that was good, what was bad, what you saw that really has a big potential of changing consumer lives, and what you saw that maybe you wish that somebody along the line said, yeah, nah, that's not worth bringing to market. And today I'm delighted to have that conversation with an amazing woman in tech, Jessica Naziri, who is a technology spokesperson who has the gift, in my view, to really be able to explain technology in such a way that consumers can understand it and see the value that technology can bring. She is the founder of TechSesh's, and she's on-air consumer tech expert in all sorts of different programs. But the latest adventure is CBS LA, where she's going to be hosting the tech segment in the morning show every Monday morning. Please help me welcome Jessica to the show.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction. And I didn't want you to feel alone, so I had to bring my confident voice with you.
So it's fabulous, right? It's like whether you're in person, as I was, or you're virtual, you're still getting the CES flu.
Exactly. I got it from live streaming.
I
Technology
appreciate
back
you.
then.
Thank you so much for being here. And I'm, we didn't kind of plan it that way, but I love that we both had a different experience. And this is the year where, CS went back in person. Last year was there was a small contingent of fan base that was in person, but the majority of people were streaming it. And this year, I think that the balance shifted: more in person, less streaming. And I wanted to see what your impression was. Has the show learned anything about how digital can actually bring technology to a broader set, or are people already pulling back and just focusing on in person? What was your experience?
Well, let me first say so last year I actually attended the
Oh,
conference.
bless you.
And that was the year where everything was streamed. The entire show was streamed from PepCon to Unveiled,
Yep.
all the events. And then this year I didn't attend, and I feel like there was actually less streaming. Um, and something just that I have been noticing all around speaking with brands, speaking to different tech companies is not as many tech brands see the value in showcasing at CES. So that was the first top of mind for me. And before the actual show, I got so many different emails with press releases under embargo. So I kind of felt like I knew what the show was.
Mhm.
And to be honest with you, a lot of what I saw last year were what people were talking about this year.
Yeah, it certainly felt that because last year was a little bit more muted, that there were brands that tried again this year to get the attention and get more focus. I certainly had the same feeling kind of walking on the show floor. And I also agree with you that in general, I don't know, maybe because we're also a little bit jaded, right? We've been doing this for a long time, and is right at the beginning of the year, after a break. I was like, the last thing you want to do is go to Vegas. But here we are. I'm curious if it was easy for you to pick up what the key trends were, because I can tell you from the show floor, it wasn't that easy.
I think that's a really good point. Whether you were there in person or you were live streaming it, this year there was no, this is the trend coming into 2023. There's not one or two or three things that I can say. I feel like this year was more of a mishmash. Instead, we saw some things that I thought would be spoken about. For example, the metaverse, not even not even like faintly something that I heard about. Um, Personalization, we saw, I think that's been a trend over the
Yeah.
years at CES with tech companies, with more women coming into the landscape, telling, brands and just doing user studies where like we need this and X, Y, and Z to make brands understand from a female standpoint what kind of technology sticks out. But what you were saying is so true. Not one or two exact, like, this is what's going to happen in 2023, and this is what we're going to see more of.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, aside from the usual suspects like cars and EVs and, self-driving cars, that obviously has had a big presence at CES over the past, I would say, 3, 4 years
It's
and
like a car
growing.
show, right?
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is true. I mean, you enter center hall and basically that's what you feel like. You're at a car show. But the rest, it wasn't so obvious. And I agree with you on the metaverse as well. There were headsets displaying and a lot of demos behind closed doors and a lot of conversations as well behind closed doors about where is the metaverse going, who's going to be winning or losing, but not necessarily something that consumer could walk away and say, okay, this is a year down the line, right? It still feels like a bunch of different experiences. We're still trying to perfect the technology, so that we can use it for longer to have a better experience. But definitely not a metaverse as a comprehensive product for sure.
right.
Was there something that stood out to you, either good or bad?
What stood out to me? So I did note that a lot of the things that I saw last year, for example, the flying cars, the Aska, I
Uh-huh.
that was really cool. I saw that last year. Like I did a whole video. This year is like, oh my God, we saw flying cars at CES. And I'm like, well, that was there last year, but I'm excited to see where that goes. And I believe the CEO of the company said in a month they'll be getting more leeway with regulations to go into fruition. That was exciting to see from now and last year how it's already been something along the pathways of, we're going to see this happen. I think really what stood out to me is a lot of companies that were really not so tech focused are now considering themselves tech companies. So we saw Neutrogena. Neutrogena came out with this super cool 3D printed gummy. I know you saw that. I'm
Yeah.
curious if you tried it because we all want to know. How's your skin looking? It looks great.
Well, I can do with it today, I have to say, to look less sickly, but yeah.
We saw Neutrogena. We saw another company. I believe it was L'Oreal. I think they had this sort of like 3D printed eyebrow pen to see like how your eyebrows would look drawn on with different shapes. And I'm all about eyebrows. I mean, I'm Middle Eastern, okay? But I think it's so cool to see the landscape of different companies that are huge, publicly traded, and not really in the tech landscape have a different section where they're going towards this path. And so for me, I love seeing things like that, especially like the cool wow factor, something that will come into the market. But also, we're seeing now that there are different realms in CES. There's something that's like really cool, there's something that's going to come into the market, and something that's never going to happen. Right. And
Yeah.
so I think most of us are talking about this stuff that are really cool and probably won't happen. It's a great concept. But it was interesting to see all that.
Yeah, it is interesting that you talk about L'Oreal and Neutrogena, because I think personalization is certainly, and you mentioned this earlier, it's something that from a health, fitness, and beauty is becoming definitely much more prominent in tech. And with that, if you're thinking especially around health and taking more control over your health, and so the data that you have, being able to use it and monitor, and I don't know if it's because of how the state of health, the health service here in the US is, but in general, being more self-sufficient in monitoring your issues. But from a beauty perspective, it's also fascinating that, to your point, these are not technology companies, but they're using technology to reinvent their business. And some of it might be vaporware, but some of it, I think, has the opportunity. We're all a little bit different. And, is the ability of taking technology like AI and take things a step further. Now I match my skin tone to a foundation just by looking at a series of picture. And I don't know about you, but I always get it wrong. I was like, I sure it kind of looks like mine, and then it arrives and it never does. What if, with AI, you can actually do a better job at that? So I think that there's a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, and we saw
Um,
that with YSL. They actually have a compact disc like that where you pick a color, let's say like the red that you have on your lips. I take a picture, I upload it into the app, and then I can get that exact color shade and match it to myself.
right.
Absolutely.
I mean, we're doing it for, house paint. So why can't we do it for makeup?
Exactly.
um,
It's
one
solving.
thing that Yeah, that's right. One thing that was interesting, though, to your point about, flying cars, and I do believe that there was some kind of overcraft a boat this year. It wasn't a flying boat, but it was, yeah,
Oh yeah.
something like that. But I did not actually go and see. But there wasn't many crazy things. I saw some electric roller skates, and I was like, I can barely balance myself on regular one. I don't know that I want something that is electric and is going to propel me through, through the room. But there wasn't a lot of crazy, which sorry, bad word. There wasn't a lot of extravagant products, and I think that that's not a bad thing given where we are, both from coming out of COVID and what we all been through, and also economically where we are. Consumer want things that change their life for the better, and they're here now. They don't, as to your point earlier, as much as we might like to talk about it, is not necessarily something that consumers are going to go and invest money in it.
Right. That's a very good point. I think we're in this phase right now where consumers are spending their money on technology that will solve problems, not technology that's the first iteration and just seems cool. People are holding and waiting until, okay, we're there and this is going to serve a purpose. And actually, something that just came to mind is in the health space, we're seeing a lot of this. I believe it was with things that came out with this urine monitor that you stick to your toilet, and it monitors your pH balance and sees if unfortunately your pee is safe. And they have a special one for women as well to check their menstrual cycle, which I thought was very interesting. Um,
It,
and we're,
it
we're we're taking things like this that are important, things we usually go to the doctor for, and putting it into the hands of consumers. So is that something people will buy? I think so. I think that we're now in a phase where, as consumers, we want to take that data and do something with it. And this is an ongoing trend, and it's getting better and better and better. Before, we would just like slap something on our wrist, with our watches. Now we see the Aura Ring with all this data for like sleeping and seeing your readiness score. And now with your overall health, I think this is a new trend that people will spend money on it if it's something that's going to benefit them, not just because it's a wow, cool factor.
I agree, but at the same time, I'm also thinking about some of the controversy, for instance, around the urine monitor, and where we are in the US from an abortion regulation perspective, because there is a concern that, and this is true for a lot of the data, right? Technology is generating the data, and that data can be used for good or bad. And that's a concern, right? Yes, the good thing is that you can follow your menstrual cycle. The bad thing is, well, they also, because of the enzymes in the urine, tell you other things that you might not want people to have hold of you. And so how do you deal with that data? How do you keep that data private is absolutely critical. And I feel that a lot of the technology that we see today, the technology might be ready, but either society or the regulation environment is not. And
I
this
think
is something,
yeah,
yeah, that we need to address.
absolutely. I think that's a larger conversation. Something that I
Correct.
personally didn't see this year is any conversations around privacy and ethics. I remember like pre-CV, pre-CE, I'm sorry, pre-COVID, there was a huge billboard that Google had about privacy. Or was it Apple? Now I'm
With
confused.
Apple,
It was
yeah.
Apple? Okay, so it was Apple. And so that was like the final and last time that a big company was discussing privacy. After that, frankly, I feel like this is something like hush hush. Obviously, there's so many things in court right now. People don't want to bring it up, but this is a huge conversation that consumers need to also understand because like you're saying, this is not data. If you're giving your menstrual cycle information to a big company, who has hold of it? Where does it go? What do we do from there? And I would
Correct.
like to see more of that. Maybe because I was, online, I didn't see that, but offline, was that a conversation that was had at CES?
Not so much about privacy. There were conversations more around sustainability as one of the big themes, which was good because it didn't feel like greenwashing. It was actually, constructive conversations about sustainability. Not so much about privacy. I think that that's a little bit of a given because of GDPR rolling out, and companies having to basically be mindful of how they use the data, or they store the data. The Facebook Cambridge Analytica debacle a few years ago kind of woke everybody up to how things should be and or shouldn't be. So I think that, to your point, is not necessarily a topic of conversation aside from Apple, that always talks about privacy because it's one of their tenants. So
Right.
they do talk about it, but generally we don't. And I think that that's the part as well, that maybe consumers don't necessarily, they think about it for big tech. And at the moment, there's a lot of negativity around big tech for different reasons, but then they don't necessarily think about it for the smaller companies that might not seem as callous, maybe, as the larger tech companies, but that doesn't mean that you're not running risk with them either. So yeah, it's definitely a conversation that we can have a whole, just a whole program on. What were you hoping to see that you didn't see?
Wow, that's a great question. What was I hoping to see that I didn't see? I think you touched it upon like more of the like wow factor, things that like get really, really excited, right? Things that haven't really developed yet, new ideas. I feel like we've been seeing a lot of the same ideas. We saw a lot of like in the health in the like the pet space. We saw that where like helping like pets kind of transcribe what they're saying. I saw uh, that little foam thing that was on display. I saw like robots for kids, but we've seen all this. So nothing out of the ordinary that I'm like, that was the winner of the show, in my opinion. There was no actual winner for me.
Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't go in. This goes back to my being jaded. I didn't go in with great expectation. It's always amazing to see the big display on the LG booth. With they have a huge, display that is a tunnel that you walk through, and is amazing. And I saw actually a dual screen device from Lenovo, the Yoga i9, which starts to think about different workflows that you can have on a PC, because you can stack the screen.
Right.
So you can end up with a really tall vertical screen by two screen, or change it and use it horizontally. It's kind of interesting how dual screen and rollables are starting to become more, uh, something that either because the industry is trying to re-energize, or because there is actually a need for that, are becoming more of a focus. Samsung Display had a cross between a rollable and a foldable. So it folded open like a book, and then one side was stretched out as well. So it was, open and then open some more. And that is amazing. But how far away are we before this can be produced in a mass market volume?
Right. And
So we're
how
going back to the point of, yeah, technology is cool, but we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. Excuse me.
And the other thing that I thought was interesting, you made the point earlier about technologies that see, that they're not necessarily tech companies that use tech, like we talked about. But there were also companies that they're not technology companies. And I'm not quite even sure how they think technology plays that were there. There was a coffee machine company that had a $9,000, actually close to 10, because this was $9,800 coffee maker. And the only reason that it was tech, I'm guessing, is that there was a screen on top of it. And so you could input on the screen, what kind of coffee you wanted. But 10 grand? It's,
That coffee superpowers, right? Yeah.
I mean, I'm into coffee, but not 10 grand worth of coffee.
That's interesting. What was the brand name?
I knew you were gonna ask me, and I cannot remember, but I will go and find it and put it in the notes. Um,
Research
but
purposes.
yeah, you knew that we were gonna talk about this, and you mentioned it at the beginning. This is always a controversial topic, which is women presence at the show. I always remind my first ever Forbes column was back 3 years ago when Ivanka Trump attended CES. And I wrote a column that generated so much hate because I said there were better women in tech than Ivanka Trump to go and have a keynote at CES. Um, and I feel that we made progress as far as the number of women that are taking center stage, but we're still so much work to do. What was your impression about both from a presence and then the way that the brands address women in tech?
Okay, so this is a really interesting topic. I will say this year I noticed more people, more friends of mine that are not necessarily in tech, people I follow on social media who attended the show because they had a liking to see what's going on. Is very buzzworthy, a lot of like content creation worthy things. So that's exciting because we're seeing more women take an interest. Now maybe they always have, but just the fact that they're attending now was a big win for me. Excuse me. Now, that was just seeing it on social media. I remember 4 years ago, I went to CES and I was pregnant, and it's like I was a product there. And so,
You were making one
yeah,
for
I was
sure.
making a product. Exactly. I was making a product. The show floor, people staring at me, asking me why I was there. Like, are you okay? Like, how did this happen? I'm like, well, I can't exactly tell you. But I think that for a long time, and even still, it's a very male dominated culture. If you look and see the VCs in the space putting their money to the products, putting their money to the founders, there is a big disposition here. I think that we still have a long way to go, but I do see progress. Now, I know you were part of the female quotient panel, which is amazing. Um, I think when And I maybe this is like a wrong thing to say, but I feel like when things like that don't exist anymore, then we're in a good place.
Oh,
When we need to
absolutely.
have a separation, and when we need to really point it out and have a specific area and a specific walking tour, that means we still have a big issue,
Yeah.
meaning we have a lot to work on.
I totally agree with you. I mean, the Equality Lounge, which is the space that the female quotient runs at CES now for a few years, they've done that, is amazing, and it's such a vibrant environment with so many smart, successful women and men that are sponsors and allies that are there to try and solve some of the issues like what you were saying about funding and creating more diversity in the business and who VCs are actually choosing to get their money. And that was actually the conversation that I was part of. And I could not agree more with you that the moment that that does not either stand by itself because it's not part of a of CES, right? Is in a corner at the area. You need to go find it. It's not, yeah, obviously they advertise it and everything, but it's not part of the main show. But the
Right.
moment that we're not going to do a separate track for women, the moment that we don't have things like that, is when we will all be in the same space. And I thought that from a product perspective, I wrote another article a few years ago about how I still felt that I wasn't the target buyer for
Uh,
a lot of things that I was seeing. My husband was, even when it came to the home, for different reasons. One is economically, there's still a lot of women, especially in the US, that use their husband's card. And so, even if they make the decision, they're not seen as making the decision because the credit card is not theirs. So that's fascinating by itself. But this year, I was more of the target, but for everything that I think the status quo decides a woman places. And so, I was the target for beauty. I was the target for house chores, things that are traditionally associated with women. And I don't know if I call that progress. So,
Yeah,
but
no, I see what you're saying. I see exactly what you're saying. Like, yes, there were a few gadgets here and there from big name brands showcasing tech that we could use, but not necessarily like other dimensions in the home besides like cleaning and,
correct.
back in the day, workspace, workflow. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. This is something we need to work on.
I absolutely. And then that's why, your point earlier about seeing more women taking interest in creating content and being out there, that helps because that adds to the perspective that often we don't have. And so that's certainly a win. As always with these things, we're already running out of time. So
Oh,
one last question for you, which is, do you think that CES as a future? Do you think that we need CES going forward?
I say yes, 100%. Despite, things we need to work on, despite things that need improvement, it's still a huge show and it brings a lot of excitement. It brings a lot of new people in the industry. And I think it continues the conversation. So to have a big show where everyone's gathering around, I think we would miss it.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you as much as I hate it. Because it's right after the holidays because I get
They just
sick
make
every
it a week.
time. Yeah,
Yeah.
they should move it, right? They should, I don't know, it should be in the summers. Well, I don't know, summer in Vegas, but yeah, anyway, but I agree with you. It's a moment in time for the industry. And I know that there's a lot of big brands that are rethinking their plans for CES, but for the smaller companies is a moment in time where they have attention, where they can reach so many people in 1 week, and we can't underestimate the power of that. So I'm with you. I think we should keep it around for a while longer.
Yes.
I'm so grateful for your time today, especially because you weren't feeling well. And I want you to tell our audience where they can find you with all your amazing views
Oh,
and
thank
insights
you.
on tech.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. It was so much fun having this conversation. So you can find me at Jessica Naziri on Twitter, on Instagram, on LinkedIn. And if you're in Los Angeles, you mentioned every Monday at 9:15, I'm on the morning show at CBS LA talking about the latest trends in technology.
Thank you so much. And you really need to tune in, especially on our Instagram. She always has some amazing videos on must have tech and tech that maybe, needs a little bit of explaining, and she'll make it clear for you.
Thank you so much. You're great.
Thank you so much, Jessica. I hope you feel better and
Thank you.
to more conversation in the future.
Yes. Good to see you. Good to see you all.
Thank you all.